30 more seconds. Hello, Slindel. Kunjani? Ngiyaphila. And which the President listed as such in his State of the Nation address on the 9th of February. These are concerns which shape the program of the President as well as government, which are load shedding, unemployment, poverty and the rising cost of living, and crime and corruption. The deliberations of a recently held cabinet meeting chaired by the President just 4 days ago reflected on government's clarity and urgency in addressing these priorities. President Ramaphosa noted progress in such areas as the opening of a bid window of 513 megawatts of battery storage capacity as part of our response to the energy challenge. The President also welcomed a regulatory exemption granted to Eskom by Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Ms. Barbara Creasy, that will later this year allow Kusile Power Station to resume generation capacity of 2,100 megawatts, which will reduce South Africa's exposure to load shedding by 2 levels. The President has praised the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the automotive company Stellantis South Africa, the Industrial Development Corporation, and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to develop a new vehicle manufacturing facility in South Africa. Stellantis sells Jeep, Alfa Romeo, Fiat, Citroën, Opel, and Peugeot brands in South Africa. An investment of this nature is an acknowledgement of our country's world-class manufacturing capacity in the automotive sector. It will deepen the industrialization of our economy, and most importantly, it will create more jobs. The President is also encouraged by the export numbers from Minister Ibrahim Patel when he presented the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition's Q3 report to Parliament. The Minister reported that as part of the realization of private sector pledges to invest more than 1 trillion rand in our economy, South Africa achieved 188 billion rands in manufactured exports in Q3. In other words, that translates to 60 billion rands a month or 2 billion rands a day. These colleagues are important examples among many of how government, social partners, and the nation's labor force are working together for inclusive and sustainable growth. This is the context within which the President's leadership and coordination plays out, and a demonstration of an economy that continues to open up and seek more growth. On Monday, the 20th of March, Mondays are normally reserved for the President to attend to his role as President of the governing African National Congress, and tomorrow will be no exception in this regard. On Tuesday, the 21st of March, the President will lead the national commemoration of Human Rights Day under the theme Consolidating and Sustaining Human Rights Culture into the Future. The history of Human Rights Day is grounded in the Sharpeville massacre that took place on the 21st of March, 1960, where apartheid police killed 69 anti-apartheid protesters. Human Rights Day also honors the 35 people who were killed on the 21st of March in 1985 when apartheid police targeted community members after a funeral in Langa, Uitenhage. As part of the democratic dispensation, South Africa observes Human Rights Month to promote the respect for basic human rights for all and restore and uphold human dignity in line with the Bill of Rights. This period also honors those who fought for liberation and celebrates the many rights guaranteed under the Constitution, which are the basis for building a united and inclusive, non-racial and non-sexist, prosperous society. De Aar in the Northern Cape has been selected as the site for the National Human Rights Day commemoration as part of government's rotation of national days that ensures that communities in all provinces are able to be part of such occasions. On Wednesday, the 22nd of March, the President will chair a meeting of the National Security Council as part of government's regular cycle of assessing matters of national and international security. These deliberations allow security services to take decisions and act in ways that keep us safe in our homes, streets, and workplaces, and that allow our economy to move forward in the way that we illustrated earlier. Wednesday will also mark the beginning of a historic visit with the arrival of His Majesty King Felipe and Her Majesty Queen Matilda of the Kingdom of Belgium in South Africa. This will be the first state visit to South Africa by the Belgian monarchy. President Ramaphosa's invitation to His Majesty and Her Majesty underscores the strong bilateral relations that exist between the two countries. The state visit will serve to expand and strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries and revitalize economic relations with a focus on trade, foreign direct investment, and tourism. South Africa and Belgium are also pursuing cooperation in renewable energy and in particular green hydrogen. Belgium is one of South Africa's most important economic partners, and many of South Africa's exports enter Europe through the port of Antwerp, which is the second largest in the European Union. South Africa enjoys a very healthy trade surplus with Belgium, with organic chemicals as the key export, followed closely by diamonds and motor vehicles. Belgian companies are also significant investors in the South African economy. Belgium is traditionally among the 10 major sources of international tourists to South Africa. This bilateral economic activity sustains South African and Belgian enterprises and sustains jobs and livelihoods for thousands of South Africans in sectors that produce goods and services that are of value to Belgian investors and visitors. Relations between South Africa and Belgium are managed through a joint commission that meets at the level of deputy foreign ministers. The King's delegation will comprise of political, economic, and academic leadership, including the Federal Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Haja Labib, as well as the ministers and representatives of the 5 regions of Belgium. The program of the monarchs will include official engagements with President Ramaphosa and members of government, as well as visits to Johannesburg and Cape Town, where they will engage with academia, business, civil society, and visit historical and cultural sites. On Thursday, the official welcome ceremony of the Belgian state visit will take place at the Union Buildings from 10 a.m., while a South Africa-Belgium business forum will take place on the same day at the CSIR in Bromeria, Pretoria. Business forums are platforms where private and public sector leaders and representatives are able to explore mutually beneficial opportunities, and where, as the President and Minister Patel always say, businesses are able to advance from contact to contract. The President looks forward to this visit as an occasion for deepening strong ties between South Africa and Belgium as an important European and global economy. On Tuesday, the 28th of March, the President will address the localization dinner function of the proudly South African Buy Local Summit and Expo. The Buy Local Summit 2023 highlights sectors that impact positively on the economy and job creation, including furniture, agro-processing, fast-moving consumer goods, clothing, textiles, footwear, and leather. At the dinner, the President will interact with CEOs and captains of industry who will report on existing localization activities and pledge further escalation of localization within their company's procurement choices. And on Thursday, the 30th of March, the President will brief the National Council of Provinces on issues raised by members and questions for oral reply. And that brings us to the end of the President's program for the period ahead, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you. Samgelo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Magwenya. I saw coming into the Union building that security has been tightened. A lot of gates have been locked. I saw high police presence and also saw some members of the South African National Defence Force. Are these security measures put in place for tomorrow's planned, quote-unquote, national shutdown of the economic freedom fighters? What plans does government have in place to ensure that South Africans are safe and can go about their normal business tomorrow? And the issue of heavy security being used, what are the security plans in place? Then on an international aspect, the International Criminal Court has just ruled that Russian President Vladimir Putin must be arrested. He's planned to arrive in South Africa for the BRICS Nations Summit, with South Africa chairing BRICS. Are plans still afoot for President Putin to arrive in South Africa, with government not foreseeing an Omar al-Bashir situation unfolding all over again, which happened during the era of former President Zuma? Thank you.
Thank you, Samgelo. Tomorrow there is, as far as we understand, a planned protest. Individuals have been going around different parts of the country inappropriately and illegally instructing businesses to remain closed for tomorrow under the guise of the so-called shutdown. The state has a responsibility to protect critical infrastructure. The state has a responsibility to ensure that citizens can go on about their day tomorrow in a normal way, and when doing so, that they are safe and that they are not subjected to any anarchy or any form of violence. The President has stated that as much as the right to protest is guaranteed and protected under our Constitution, equally, that right is not absolute, and that right is not a ticket to any form of anarchy or violence or disrupting and interrupting other people's rights to go on with their lives. The security presence that you refer to is part of a broader exercise of ensuring that critical infrastructure as well as key government installations are protected in the face of threats that have been continuously been made in the build-up to tomorrow. With respect to the ICC, we note the reports on the warrant of arrest that the ICC has issued against President Putin. It remains South Africa's commitment and very strong desire that the conflict in the Ukraine is resolved peacefully through negotiations. We are, as a government, cognizant of our legal obligation. However, between now and the summit, we will remain engaged with various relevant stakeholders with respect to the summit and other issues related.
Thank you. Slenda Ramasigan from the NCA. I would just like to get an update with regards to the work of the electricity minister since his appointment. I heard the president mentioning yesterday during a civil society engagement that the decision to appoint the electricity minister was not even done through any, discussions or whatever, that the president moving forward is going to be making some tough decisions. And consultations would probably not be taking place. With regards to the work of the electricity minister, what has he done so far, as well as the announcement of the national state of disaster? have funds already been dispersed? Has the electricity minister's office been set up, etc.? And then just lastly, is the presidency concerned of any threats of violence? We do see a heightened police presence, in particular around the union buildings. Are there identified, perhaps, national key points that are also going to be seeing a heightened law enforcement presence? Thank you.
So let me start with the last question. The president has directed law enforcement agencies to ensure that citizens' rights are protected with respect to those fellow South Africans that want to carry on with their normal business tomorrow. Schools will be closed as part of a mandatory school holiday. It is almost a long weekend type of period we're going into because of the holiday on Tuesday, and some people will take leave and travel. The football calendar locally, as I understand it, is on an international break, but I stand to be corrected. And so, as things stand, our expectation is that people will go on about their business tomorrow. However, should there be any individuals or groups that are hell-bent on creating any form of anarchy, who are hell-bent on disrupting the normal flow of business and life tomorrow, the expectation is that the security and law enforcement agencies must act accordingly and in accordance to the law with respect to the protection of national key points. They will be protected as they're always protected, as I've said, and there will be a focus with respect to the protection of critical infrastructure. It is our hope that those who decide to protest will exercise that right with a degree of responsibility, and they will do so with a degree of respect for other people's rights to carry on with their lives. With respect to the work of the Minister of Electricity, he has hit the ground running. He has engaged a number of stakeholders, from business to civil society. He has had extensive engagements with the media. The powers of the minister are being finalized. They are awaiting the president's signature, subject to any other further engagements that the president may deem fit. The minister will be visiting a number of power stations starting from tomorrow, actually, and those are Kriel and Duba power stations. And then on Tuesday, no, on the 21st, Tuesday, he will visit Kusile and Kendall. And on the 22nd, he will visit Tutuga and Camden Power Station. Wrapping up with a visit, not wrapping up, but on day 4, which is the 23rd of March, he will visit the Letabo Power Station. On the 24th of March, he will visit Ankelech, the OCGT, as well as Quebec Power Stations. So he's hit the ground running. He's had many interactions with the board at ESCOM and management. And now he will be on the ground interacting with other levels, critical levels, with respect to maintaining our power stations, also with respect to looking at solutions going forward that will ensure that we have a sustainable supply of electricity and we can reduce the severity of load shedding and ultimately end it completely. So that's where we are at the moment. The office is up and running. There are skills that the minister will be bringing in with the assistance from the Resource Mobilization Fund, and that process is already underway. And so far, there's been a very positive reception to the engagements that the minister has held with the various stakeholders that are seeking to partner with government and are also seeking to understand how the minister is going to go about fulfilling his duties. Tsakane, you have a question?
Yes. We've got a question here from Tando Mayeko of Business Day. She's asking whether the new Minister of Electricity as well as the other newly appointed members of Cabinet have signed any performance agreements with the President. And her second question is partly covered. She asks whether don't we think that the mobilization of state security forces ahead of the pending protests is an exaggeration, considering that no other protests of the EFF have ever turned violent before?
Sorry, just repeat that question, that part about the exaggeration.
Does the President think that the mobilization of state security forces ahead of the planned EFF protest is an exaggeration, considering that no other protests of the EFF have ever turned violent before?
The President has seen communication and has been informed of communication where airports have been instructed to shut down their operations, where businesses have been threatened with looting and other forms of violence should they continue to open and service the public. Now, in the face of those threats, the security forces are supposed to do what they need to do. That is to ensure that those threats do not materialize, number one. Number two, to ensure the safety of those individuals that will choose to go on about their business. I'm not a security expert, neither is Tando in this regard, so we cannot judge what is an exaggeration or not, except to say there is a responsibility on the side of the state to ensure that all constitutional rights that citizens enjoy are enjoyed without interfering with the other, and that the safety of citizens and infrastructure and key points is first and foremost in this regard, in the face of threats that have been made in this regard. What was the other question from Tando? It was with respect to the performance agreements. There is a meeting that has been scheduled where the President will meet the new ministers. It was important to allow them some time to settle into their portfolios, to receive handover reports, to be briefed in terms of programs that are currently underway, as well as with respect to priorities that have been identified by the President going into the new financial year. So once those processes have been concluded, the issue of performance agreements will then be finalized. Samgel.
Magwenya, just on the issue of the Russian president, just to get clarity, as you said that you'll be engaging as time goes on before the start of the BRICS summit, with the possibility of President Vladimir Putin not coming to South Africa, with the President already having signaled to the official opposition leader, John Steenhuisen, to brush up on his Russian, which was a signal that Vladimir Putin would be coming to the country, alongside the return of President Lula of Brazil and also President Xi Jinping of China. The non-presence of the Chinese president and the Russian president, does it not drown down the significance of the BRICS nations? And also, does this also not speak to the neutrality that South Africa has chosen in the war between Russia and Ukraine, in that should South Africa not arrest Vladimir Putin, South Africa would be in violation of the ICC statute, which they were in violation when the government failed to arrest President Omar al-Bashir. What is the country's game plan on an international perspective going forward with the new revelations coming from the ICC with regards to the government's position and posture in the Russia-Ukraine war, and also on BRICS, with Russia practically may say South Africa has to choose and decide whether they are with the new bloc or still with the West. Thank you.
So let's just dispense with your last part of your question. South Africa is a sovereign state, and no country, whether friend or foe, can instruct South Africa to choose. We're a country that's guided by its constitution, as well as values behind the constitution, or values that the constitution seeks to inspire as well as enforcing within our society. Samuel, I think your question is largely speculative because I was informed by officials at DIRCO that even the invites to BRIC heads of states have not been issued. That's number one. So I think, if we engage along those lines, we'll end up just speculating against scenarios that may not necessarily arise. Secondly, in my first response, I said to you, as a government, we are very much aware of our legal obligation with respect to the statute. I cannot speak on behalf of the previous administration and what happened there, but we're very much aware of our legal obligation in this regard. With respect to that conflict and our neutrality, the stance remains the same. That conflict can only be resolved peacefully through the negotiations. And we will repeat that message over and over and over. And President Ramaphosa, in his conversations with both President Zelensky as well as President Putin, has emphasized the importance of engagement, peaceful engagement, for the resolution of this conflict. And the President has also emphasized that the UN Secretary General can play a very key role in facilitating these engagements. We saw, for example, the result of the intervention of the UN Secretary General that led to the opening up of that corridor with respect to the supply of wheat. And so it stands to reason that should the Secretary General be accorded the opportunity and space to intervene and lead peace talks, those talks will result certainly in a peaceful resolution of the conflict. And so let's not speculate. Let's rather just deal with facts. At the moment, a lot of the scenarios that you paint are scenarios that may not arise in this particular case.
Mr. Magwenya, Katel Sohoto from Newsroom Africa. I'd just like to ask about, we know this proposed shutdown taking place tomorrow. Some sentiments that have been shared before today is that there might be a repeat of the 2021 July unrest. Has the state learned its lessons from that incident, and are there intelligence kind of methods or understandings that have been learned from the lessons that we observed in 2021 that are going to be applied now in terms of making sure that things don't escalate from the state side, just making sure that it understands all the things that are at play on the ground?
So it's interesting because on the one hand you have people expressing genuine concerns that you could have a repeat of what happened in July. On the other hand, you have people alluding to the fact that the deployment that has been quite visible so far of security forces may be an exaggeration. Now, in between those two views, you have a government that has a responsibility to protect its citizens and to ensure that we do not see the repeat of those horrible, horrible scenes that we saw in 2021. The recommendations of the Sandy Africa report that the President commissioned following that incident have been implemented by various law enforcement agencies, and they are still being implemented. You will recall towards the end of last year, we had quite a significant number of cadets that were graduating as part of the new public order policing, for example. And so those lessons have been learned, and the President has instructed law enforcement agencies to ensure that we do not ever see the repeat of those sins that we saw back in 2021.
Sorry, Mr. Magwenya, lastly on my side. I would just like to get the Presidency's comment with regards to what we're seeing in our local municipalities, in particular Tshwane. We've seen the chaos in Johannesburg. Is the President concerned about the level of cooperative governance within these municipalities? Because as it stands, Tshwane still doesn't have a mayor, and there's still a debacle around fake courts, documents, etc. So what are the expectations of the new culture minister in terms of getting these municipalities up and running again? And is there possibly a concern about this unfolding at a national level post-2024?
Sure, splendid. Okay, your question has two components in them, and the one component I'm going to stay away from. The one component is what I'll refer to as political processes that are currently taking place in Tshwane. The other component is what will be concerns around the stability of the metro, the presence or absence thereof of a clear sort of governance process or framework that will render the metro into a more sort of stable position and enable it to deliver services to citizens. The President is concerned more broadly about the President is concerned more broadly about a number of issues that are currently impacting the effectiveness of local government. And that goes beyond any particular metro that is currently going through a political dispute. As a result of that, there's been a concerted effort aimed at addressing the various issues that have been flagged with respect to undermining the capacity of local government structures from delivering to their mandates. And the new minister is well aware of the challenges that are affecting that sector of government. And the President is going to be monitoring very closely the developments that will see some form of improvement with respect to the manner in which local government structures are led and managed, and more importantly, the manner in which they deliver services to citizens. It will be ideal that whatever political processes that have to take place in Tshwane are concluded as speedily as possible so that service delivery can continue and be improved, and so that the metro is brought to some level of stability. The issue around what could happen in 2024 at national level, that's again a political question that I must kind of stay away from, except I'll say one thing: the President remains confident. In our conversations with him, he remains confident that come 2024, he will be leading the administration of the governing party without any coalition. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of this media briefing. Thank you very much, colleagues. Have a wonderful Sunday afternoon. Thank you.